Good morning, everyone. This is Bernd Christian Giels coming to you live and yet recorded when you will watch it. Today is Monday, June 29th. Like I said, my name is Bernd Christian Giels. My first name is in honor of my German grandfather. My middle name is a family name from my paternal ancestry, and my last name is a Dutch name that in its native context in the Netherlands would be pronounced Geels. So get your guttural voice on and you can do it with me too. So as I said in a recent episode yesterday, today's topic is firefighting during the age of the COVID-19 pandemic. I spent some time yesterday researching this topic, and as I continue to build out this channel and offer more episodes, I am going to be learning the process of how to share information over YouTube, record it, find an effective way to sometimes read from my screen, reference certain notes that I have, so bear with me as I continue to work out this process of learning how to do this. So, like I said, firefighting in the age of COVID-19. So this topic came to me actually last week when I was listening to an NPR episode, and the focus of that episode was firefighting during the COVID-19 pandemic. And I will reference that episode so you can look that up to learn more about that. As for my own personal background, I personally never had any fantasies about becoming a firefighter. I don't come from a family on either side that has worked in those particular professions like first responders, police officers, firefighters, paramedics. I haven't really had a great interest in working in that. I have enjoyed many movies featuring first responders, as I do find these types of folks very heroic oftentimes, and many people love a good story about a hero. So, based on what I researched yesterday, firefighting is the 15th most dangerous profession here in the United States, based on the rate of deaths of people serving in that profession. And though the focus of my topic is firefighting, I'm actually going to read out to you the top 20 most dangerous professions here in the United States of America. This is from the most dangerous, number 1, to the 20th most dangerous. And some of these were not at all a surprise to me. A few of them were actually a surprise. So the most dangerous profession in the United States is logging. And that is because loggers deal with massive trees. They have to work on steep terrain, and they have very large equipment to deal with. And also, obviously, any outdoor job is going to have the challenge of dealing with changeable weather patterns. Second most dangerous job is being a fisherman, so working on a boat can be a hazardous profession, as has been told in many stories over the years about mariners, boaters, sea dogs, and the like. Next comes pilots and flight engineers at number 3, also not shocking considering they are navigating, operating massive equipment that flies through the sky. So obviously if you do something wrong, it can have a very deadly outcome. The rest of the list is roofers at number 4. Falling off roofs can be a source of injury and mortality. Number 5 actually surprised me, garbage collectors. Number 6, steel workers. 7 is truckers. 8, farmers and agricultural workers. Number 9, line workers. Number 10, tree trimmers and lawn maintenance and landscaping professionals. Number 11 is taxi drivers. And on that note, taxi drivers have the sad distinction of being the profession in which they have the highest murder rate. And that should really not be a surprise, because taxi drivers are literally letting complete strangers into their taxis and taking them to a destination that could actually be a dangerous place. So taxi drivers are the most murdered profession in the country, and it comes as no real surprise. Number 12 is construction workers. Number 13, miners and mining foremen. Number 14, mechanics and their supervisors. Now, firefighters come in at number 15, like I said, and police officers are also grouped in with firefighters and other first responders. 16 is janitors and pest control technicians. 17, manufacturing and production workers. Number 18, artists, designers, and entertainment professionals. You might wonder, how could that be a lethal profession? Well, consider for a moment the different equipment, technical equipment, the different things that you're going to have on a stage for a performance. Some of these can be dangerous to deal with, obviously. Number 19 is architects and engineers. Sometimes people who design buildings make the mistake of falling off of those buildings. And number 20, social workers. Social workers can sometimes end up in dangerous situations when they're trying to help their clients. So that is the list of the 20 most dangerous professions here in the United States of America. Now, based on the research that I did last night, firefighting comes in as a dangerous profession, obviously because of things like smoke inhalation, actually being at risk of being burned to death or being trapped behind the lines of a fire where you can't escape. There's also the risk of dealing with the equipment that you have to use as a firefighter. So there's any number of ways that firefighters become injured and even end up dying in this country. Now, according to the National Fire Protection Association website, a recent report published last year noted 2 different studies that were performed by the National Institute for Occupational Safety and Health, also known as NIOSH. These studies found that firefighters have a 9% increase in cancer diagnoses and a 14% increase in cancer-related deaths compared to the general population here in the United States of America. Now, an especially noteworthy finding that I found in this report is that sudden cardiac death accounts for 40% of on-duty fatalities. So 4 in 10 firefighter fatalities are due to sudden cardiac death. And a lot of those issues with cardiac death arise from stress and danger that firefighters face in their environment when on the job. Now, as you can imagine, stressful jobs like firefighting, being a police officer, flying a plane, some of these different professions that I just spoke about, the stress can lead not only to physical injury and death, but it can also lead to mental health issues. And this is certainly true for people who work in firefighting. So one of those same reports that I looked at indicated that suicide rates of depression and PTSD among firefighters can be up to 5 times that of the general population. Now let me say that again to be clear. Studies have indicated that rates of depression and post-traumatic stress disorder among firefighters can be up to 5 times that in the general population. And it's very easy to hypothesize what could lead people who are firefighters to develop post-traumatic stress disorder. Sometimes firefighters suffer the trauma of a very dangerous situation on duty in which they are fortunate to have survived. And there's also scenarios where they might be responding to a building fire in an urban community and face the task of attempting to attend to people who are in those buildings, rescuing them, ensuring that they get out safely. And sometimes, obviously, firefighters die due to their efforts to save other people. So this type of trauma that firefighters can experience can lead not only to the development of post-traumatic stress disorder, but then subsequently make them more vulnerable to depression and suicidal thinking, and possibly even acting on such thoughts and committing suicide. So that is, in a sense, a nutshell of what firefighting can be like, and what can result as a consequence of working in this industry: higher rates of depression, anxiety, and suicidality. So that's firefighting, kind of in an enclosed space, if you will, without considering multiple other factors, multiple other influences in a person's life that can add even more stress in and make it challenging to perform this job. And that, in a sense, leads me into the radio program that was held last Friday that gave me the idea to speak on this. So, obviously, we're not living in normal times, right? We're living in a time that is quite unfamiliar to a vast number of the people who live in the world. As many of you probably already know, the pandemic that we're currently living through is one that has been compared to the pandemic of 100 years ago in 1918, the Spanish flu pandemic. That pandemic saw millions of people throughout the world die, and currently we are about to reach 500,000 deaths, or I think we actually have reached 500,000 COVID-19 deaths throughout the world in roughly 150 days, 180 days since the pandemic first began in Asia, in China, and then came into the rest of the world. So, we're living in an unprecedented time. We have a number of people who work in difficult professions like firefighting. So, why would firefighting be even more difficult during a pandemic? One of the problems is that we have had to redesign so much of how we use space, right? When you think about grocery stores, when you think about libraries, when you think about public buildings, when you think about museums and theaters, all of these places where people congregate for a certain purpose have now had to rethink how to serve the people that they serve without risking their lives and the lives of the people that they help. So in the case of firefighters, if firefighters are working on a wildland fire or a forest fire in the desert Southwest, and they have completed their shift and they need to go to the local accommodations where they're staying, because in some cases, obviously, the firefighters don't go back home. They stay in some sort of camp or some sort of accommodation for themselves. They have to now be mindful of how they are interacting with their colleagues because of the pandemic. And so they have had to redesign how they handle the space that is used to accommodate them. So think about the canteens and the sleeping quarters and the showers, all the places that firefighters use in their time off duty now have to be redesigned to accommodate social distancing to minimize the risk of transmitting the coronavirus. So that definitely creates a new challenge on top of the existing challenges that already exist in the world of firefighting. Now, another major part of the problem of the challenge of firefighting now is that firefighters are already have to be concerned about the respiratory health, right? If you go into a burning building, if you are fighting a forest fire, one of the great risks is smoke inhalation, to the point that you can truly compromise your ability to breathe correctly and then fall ill, perhaps pass out, and even die, depending on the severity of the exposure. So now, in addition to having to be concerned about smoke exposure, falling trees, getting caught behind fire lines, firefighters now have to deal with the fact that they have to think about their potential exposure to their colleagues in terms of possible transmission of the coronavirus. So that basically necessitates that they, like the rest of us, do something to protect themselves so they minimize the risk of transmission. Now, I haven't looked closely at the actual imagery of what firefighters are wearing these days to deal with forest fires or urban fires during a pandemic, but you can imagine it just is another layer of challenge in an already challenging, demanding profession. Another issue that is also of concern is the fact that the current pandemic has obviously resulted in a major economic crisis. We closed things down for a number of weeks, a number of months throughout much of the country, and so millions of Americans lost their jobs. And the taxes that municipal governments, local governments, state governments expect to receive are now something that they have to recalculate in light of this massive economic downturn that occurred virtually instantaneously. So because of these reduced revenues, what's likely to happen in the coming 6 months to a year is a lot of governments, local governments, state government, and the federal government, are going to have to rethink their budgets and their priorities and make very, very difficult budgetary decisions. One manifestation of this change in our budgetary environment is that in some cases, local and state level firefighting personnel are being called upon to assist with other forms of firefighting. Now, this is not a surprising thing, right? When you're facing a catastrophic situation and you have limited resources, and you realize the resources are so limited that they're not enough to get the job done, you're going to go looking for other help, right? That is the thing to do, one of the most important things to do, if you want to be successful in solving a problem like fighting a forest fire. So what we are likely to see is challenges with allocating sufficient resources. There will no doubt also be some conflict that develops as communities throughout the country are forced, in some instances, to compete with their fellow communities in the same state for scarce resources, including firefighting personnel. So there is a great risk that we are going to see more challenges in the future due to strained resources manifesting as insufficient staff, insufficient equipment to deal with catastrophic issues like forest fires. Now, the final point that I want to make about this that's very relevant to this problem for the firefighting profession at this time is climate change. So I am going to be speaking in future videos and this current one on the foundational belief that climate change is occurring, that it is real, that humanity is contributing to it by the large amount of greenhouse gases that we're emitting into the atmosphere. In this video, I'm not going to speak about the science of climate change. I'm not going to get into the debate that some people still want to have about whether it's actually happening. In a future episode, I might delve into that because it is a very important topic, climate change. But as for now, I am in accord with many scientists stating that it is settled science that climate change is occurring, that it is a major threat to our future in this world, and that we must, as soon as possible, address this issue by radically changing the infrastructure that we have created to live in this world. We have got to change to a cleaner energy economy as soon as possible. So I'm going to get off my soapbox there for now and delve into this last point with climate change. So in terms of forest firefighting, climate change is of concern in the desert Southwest: California, Nevada, Arizona, Oregon, Utah, New Mexico, those states. Those states have very dry climates in general, except for the coast of Oregon. Interior Oregon is much drier because of the rain shadow of the coastal mountains of Oregon. So these states have forests that are managed in large measure by the federal government. And then there's the challenge of having local and state level governments deal with forest fires when they encroach upon very large communities, cities, and the like, such as the Los Angeles Basin and Flagstaff, the vicinity of Flagstaff is another example. And even the Bay Area of San Francisco. There was a historic fire in Oakland in, I believe it was 1991, that is still well remembered by the local people. So, climate change is believed to be of great concern because some of the predictions for the future suggest strongly that the desert Southwest that these states are going to become much drier in future decades. So dry, in fact, that the fire seasons will likely be longer throughout the calendar year. So the beginning and the end of what you expect to be the season in which fires are a big problem is going to continue to grow. And we are already seeing this. I have kept some amount of attention on this topic for years as a meteorologist, fascinated by how forest fires are one metric that we can use to, in a sense, gain an understanding of the problem of climate change now and in the future. So the predictions are that this part of the world is going to become drier, that the fire season will become longer, and as we have more development occur that encroaches upon forests throughout these states, more and more people will be put at risk of losing their property, their homes, their very lives because of that close proximity to these increasingly stressed forests in this part of the world. So, I'm going to leave you with one website to check out where you can learn more about this particular topic of firefighting in the Southwest of the United States. So check out the website for the Southwest Fire Science Consortium. There are some great resources on this website if you want to learn more about firefighting and forest fires, fire science specific to the Southwest of the United States of America. Now, lastly, I'm going to talk a little bit just about the conclusions that I've drawn about this issue of firefighting in the era of COVID-19. So based on what I've researched, some of the most vital professions that provide protection and support to our citizenry are also some of the most dangerous and, I would argue, undercompensated professions in the country. And unfortunately, due to climate change, several of these professions, such as the ones that I've noted in the top 20 list, are going to become increasingly vulnerable and risky because the work done by these people is done outside. So in a warmer world, we're going to be at more risk of heat exhaustion. We're going to have it become more challenging to work during certain hours of the day in hot climates. It will become much more risky in the coming decades. Perhaps much more is an overstatement, but it will become more risky. I haven't looked at data to quantify the actual percentage increase of risk, but that sort of data I am confident is out there to be found. So, climate change is going to make some professions more challenging, and firefighting is definitely one of them. And what we see happen with forest fires in the desert Southwest is a great example of a worrisome trend. Secondly, it's obvious that if these professions are very deadly, then the risk of injury is quite high because many people die due to a mortal injury that they suffer in these professions. So death is not something that just suddenly happens in many cases. It's something that happens due to an injury that proves to be fatal. So those are the conclusions that I just wanted to share with you folks today. I appreciate you listening. I appreciate you taking an interest in my YouTube channel. This is the 5th episode, as I have noted. It is also the longest episode now that I see from my recording time. Future episodes will continue to be an organic process as I discover the direction that this channel is most suited to evolve in. I don't know what that's going to look like. I am very much enjoying offering these episodes to all of my viewers. I hope you will tell your friends about me. I am very excited to continue making content for you, and I do not, as of today, have an announcement yet as to what episode 6 will be, but I will be thinking about that later today. So, I am once again here in Mashpee with the beautiful trees and greenery behind me near the Mashpee Library. You all have a wonderful day. Thank you again, and look for me again later this week, most likely tomorrow, for yet another episode of my channel. You all have a great day. Thank you.